Hey, Utah Mammoth fans, tuss up and welcome into another Utah Mammoth Daily. All right, so the goal is playoffs or bust now, right? After that 7-game winning streak, beating playoff caliber teams and looking good doing it, the target now is it's playoffs, right? And so what we're looking at here is big game hunting. I've talked a little bit about it before, and I'll talk about it again. The Mammoth, as currently constructed, while a super fun team to watch, does not have the depth necessary to make a deep run. So here's the rundown. Utah currently has $5.2 million in cap space and could have up to $20.7 million available by the trade deadline. That's the same, pretty much the same as every other team across the NHL. So there could be way more buyers than sellers at this deadline when it comes to pass. That's an incredible amount of flexibility for every team already sitting near the top, or for the teams that are sitting atop the Western Conference, like, your Dallas Stars, your Colorado Avalanche, Vegas Golden Knights, Utah Mammoth. So what did the Mammoth need here? Well, according to multiple articles, depth on defense, depth at forward, and playoff experience. So depth is what the Mammoth need. It makes a lot of sense. The Mammoth's young core is dazzling, to be sure. Cooley, Gunther, Peterka, even Simashev. But come April, it's the veterans who've been through the grind that make the difference. Utah hasn't made the postseason in their existence. The Coyotes didn't make the postseason since 2020, and that's an asterisk, as we all know. This isn't about being patient anymore. I think it's more about playoffs or bust. GM Bill Armstrong has draft capital to burn, blue chip prospects that he could move, like Maverick Lamoureux. Maybe even if the trade target is big enough and fits well enough into what he's already built, he could move another name like Daniil Boot that could headline a major deal. And as I'll talk about here later in the show, maybe even a current player who's on a heater, and that could swing a major blockbuster deal. And the tone out of Salt Lake City makes it clear. This team's not waiting around for next year. They're ready to go hunting now. And this team is really, really ready for it, I think. Now, let's talk about what they need in there. So when you look at this roster, the message from basically all of these different outlets, from the hockey news to the hockey writers to the Athletic, ESPN, NHL.com, it doesn't matter. Utah doesn't need more youth. It needs more experience. And in my opinion, it needs more scoring outside of the top six. The top six could skate with anyone in the league. But imagine adding a proven veteran who's been through deep playoff runs in the forward area. Obviously, we've got Kevin Stenlund, but he's your fourth-line face-off specialist guy. Other than that, the forward group is kind of lacking in playoff experience. The D group has it in spades. Nate Schmidt, Mikhail Sergachev, and then even the goaltending has a little bit of it as well with Vitek Vanacek. So the forward group is lacking a little bit in that deep playoff run experience. So those kinds of players, those guys that have those deep playoff runs that can still score, they don't really grow on trees, right? And with a recent article from The Athletic that I really enjoyed, it was by Pierre Lebrun, who I've enjoyed his work for years. He said that this year is different than pretty much any year he can remember because so many teams are at different points of either a rebuild or a contention window where everyone is kind of at the same spot. And so you're not going to have a ton of people selling. You're not going to have a ton of people, you're going to have a ton of people buying. So that really makes things interesting, especially for teams that might drop out of the race, like the Flames. Now, as far as scoring is concerned, there's not many people on the Flames that teams want outside of maybe a Nazem Kadri, but he's having a down year just like everybody on the Flames. And his contract is, even though the salary cap is increasing, it still is not very palatable for a lot of teams considering term and age. So these guys are platinum level assets for these teams that might drop out of the playoff race this year. So, but these guys, they've seen momentum swings, they've handled the media pressure, and they know how to navigate the intensity, not just of playoff hockey, but in the race to the playoffs. So the same goes for the blue line. The blue line needs another right-handed shot defenseman until Sean Durzi can come back. And I've been saying that ad nauseum. You're probably sick of hearing me saying it, so I won't say it again. But that is something that I think they could really use. Utah's front office has spent the last 2 years building the perfect foundation and building around this young core. Now it's about rounding out the edges, finding those battle-tested veterans who can help this team not just make the playoffs, but make a run. And so that's something that I know they are already looking into, as are, the Canadiens, for example. Youngest team in the NHL, they're playing like their hair's on fire. So it's not just the Mammoth that are reaching this point of a rebuild, and the sellers are going to be few and far between, and there's going to be a bunch of buyers. Even the Penguins, who everybody thought they weren't going to do anything. They were going to trade Malkin, they were going to trade Crosby, they were going to tear it down to the studs. I mean, they're competing in the Eastern Conference towards the top. And it could be a Washington Capitals type run for Sidney Crosby like they had with Alex Ovechkin last year. So very, very interesting year. I encourage you to read that Pierre LeBrun article on The Athletic. I think he did a wonderful job explaining just how interesting and weird this NHL season is becoming. Now let's talk about Tusky. So Tusky's truth, the streak, the culture shift. Let's not forget the off-ice story that's fueling a lot of this, and pretty much all of it. It's the culture here in Utah. Since the debut of Tusky, Utah ripped off a 7-game winning streak, and the buzz hasn't stopped. There are places that are running pieces calling Tusky one of the best mascots in the NHL. I think that's really early to say that. It's 7-8 games now, right? So let's not say that yet. But it's a fun story, sure. It means something deeper, though. This fan base isn't just showing up. We're buying in. The Delta Center feels like a college game experience. It's loud. There's a lot of people there. Everybody is dialed in and locked in. It's not like a Los Angeles Dodgers game where you're just there to watch yourself watch the game, like people are watching the game. The towels, the chants, the noise, it's infectious. Head coach Andre Trigny even said the fans have become the team's extra gear. That's culture. And for a relocated franchise that was once defined by uncertainty, small crowd sizes, a lack of general support from ownership, that's a massive win. Culture is how you attract free agents. It's how you convince veterans to waive no trade clauses. And right now, Utah's culture, it's winning. And Tusky is just a small part of that. He has a lot of fun. I wouldn't call him one of the best in the NHL yet. Let's give him a few years before we put him up there. But still a lot of fun. And now, I alluded to this earlier, the contract standstill and the cold reality of contention. This is Nick Schmaltz. I did a whole episode on him a couple of days ago. Now, of course, not everything here in Mammoth Land is smooth sailing. There are outlets reporting that there's a contract standstill between Utah and Nick Schmaltz. Elliot Friedman says the two sides aren't even close to a new deal. It's widely believed that Nick Schmaltz, who's in his contract year playing some of his best hockey, he's going to be moved on. Whether that's going to be at the end of the season as an unrestricted free agent that Utah just doesn't want to pay for at this point, or at the trade deadline after the Olympic break, where they feel like they could get a lot back for him or even use him as a key centerpiece in a huge swing. The Mammoth reportedly asked this for his trade list over the offseason. And with pretty much everybody else locked up long-term, it's hard to see how he fits financially. And then you also have guys like Barrett Hayton, even Clayton Keller. Their contracts are going to be coming up over the next two to 3 years. So they're going to want to keep some flexibility there, even with the salary cap going up. This is where contending front offices earn their stripes. Utah's front office has to balance the now with the future. Do you ride Schmaltz's production into the postseason and risk losing him for nothing? Or cash in while his stock is sky high, probably will never be higher, and then use those assets to bring in playoff-tested depth. It's a cold calculation, but one every real contender has to make. But one thing is for certain. The Mammoth are no longer playing for respect. They're earning it. They're playing for a banner. They want to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs and the Western Conference Finals. And that changes everything. So that has been Utah Mammoth Daily today. From Tusky to Trade Talk to Schmaltzy's contract. Thank you for being here. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all tomorrow.